I'm CM Magana from the Strange and Unusual podcast, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Better Podcasting, a show where we talk about podcast tips, tools, and best practices to help you succeed with your podcast. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we podcast purely out of the love and fun of it. Podcasting is our hobby, and we recognize that it's yours too. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Hello and welcome to episode 33 of Better Podcasting. My name is Stephen John Drew, and with me today is the handsome Stargate Pioneer.
Absolutely handsome and just ready to roll. Tell you what, tonight we have a very special episode. We are going to be talking all about chair dancing. Yes, chair dancing is what podcasters do when their intro plays or their bump plays and they just got to jam to it. And that is what we'll be talking about today. Stephen, take it away.
Yeah, don't believe that that's the case at all. However, if you do like chair dancing and you want to definitely get in touch with us, you can do that through a variety of ways, including facebook.com/betterpodcasting, where we are actually broadcasting this show live today. You can always subscribe to facebook.com/betterpodcasting, and whenever we go live, we will stream it out there as long as my provider continues to be able to handle that. And that is a big caveat there if you don't know about my crappy internet.
Yeah, and my crappy internet too. We were just going over data caps and everything else. We're like, ooh, we're kind of, we thought we could do this with what we had, and we're not sure anymore. So we'll see how long that we could keep this up.
Absolutely. So this week we are going to continue our arc on the distribution method, and we're going to get into things in a moment here, but I just want to remind everybody before we do that we are part of the Gonna Geek Network, and the Gonna Geek Network has a variety of geeky podcasts, and if you are looking to join a network, you can do that by going to gonnageek.com/join, and you can apply there. There is a review panel. We do have a certain standard that we try to adhere to, but if you do apply, we usually give you a bit of information if by chance you are rejected. So do give us, check us out if you are looking for a network. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast and you take all your advice and implement it in your podcast, you probably won't have that much of an issue. Stephen, we had one applied to the network that we just didn't feel was a fit. But that was like one in like a couple of dozen. So
absolutely,
just follow the advice here, get your audio quality good, get your production up, and we will be glad to take a look at it.
For sure. And before we do move on here, I want to just touch on something that I've talked about on and off here for a little while. It's called Windows 10. And so far, I've had overall pretty good experiences with Windows 10. I know a lot of podcasters have still been waiting. However, just today, SP and I discovered something that I feel I should share. And I've talked about it before, and if you're not familiar with it, the way that my system works is I have a variety of Skype accounts on one computer. It's extremely complicated, but just know that when I do podcasts with multiple people, everybody is connected through an individual Skype account. So I have one that SP, like on the GonnaGeek.com podcast, I have one that SP is connected to, one that Chris is using, and one that JS is using. Well, today we discovered that bandwidth problem that we spoke to last week is tied to a specific account. So I have an account that I usually connect to SP on, and through that account, I don't see him clearly. However, going to another account, I end up seeing him quite clear. This is a follow-up as well to last week when I was trying to upload YouTube videos to YouTube. I was able to send them fine through Firefox, but not through Chrome. I thought that it was a Chrome bug. I'm beginning to think maybe this is a Windows 10 thing because it was working fine until then. So a couple oddities that I just thought I should share with you that you might encounter, assuming that it is a Windows 10 bug.
It's something. I don't know if it's Windows 10, if it's our internet and throttling the IP. It could be your router. Who knows what it really is? But my guess right now, my bet is on Windows 10 because, as you said, things were working fine before. And then when you switched over, they were not working fine. Gonna Geek this week for me was absolutely hellacious trying to see what was going on the other end, which was a problem because there was some very important information that was being flashed on the screen that I could not see. And I had to open up the Facebook Live in order to see it. But the problem there was it was like 15 seconds delayed. So there you go, Steven. I tried as best as I could to live with it and not just shut up and take it like a podcaster and move on.
And this is why SP and I will be doing a fiber connection directly from his door to mine, right? We've got the money for that as hobby podcasters.
That and a dedicated geosynchronous satellite just dedicated to better podcasting.
For sure. Let's continue talking some distribution. This time we are going to get a little bit more advanced. Some things that we've actually talked about on here a couple of times. And last week, if you didn't catch it, we did cover the basic distribution, distributing yourself through things like iTunes and through Google Play Music and things like that. And this time we're getting a little bit more techie. So you might have to put that techie hat on a little bit, right, SP?
I'm all about the techie hat, and I would put a pocket protector in, but I happen to wear a shirt that doesn't have a pocket for a protector. So, I mean, I could do the thing by clipping a pen or a slide rule or whatever to my collar, but it's just not going to be the same. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with what I got on, which is my Audio-Technica ATH M40X headphones, studio monitoring headphones, and then move on. So we're going to be talking about live distribution today, and there are some pros and some cons with it. So let's just talk about some of the pros, right? If we're talking about distribution, we're talking about trying to promote your podcast, try to get it out there as much as we can. And in this particular case, the more places that you can actually stream it where people are, the more exposure you're going to get. So you're looking at different places that might get a different audience, maybe a different little exposure to a different group out there than you're normally at. Say, for instance, I've been on Blab pretty much for Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Starling Tribune, which has been, up and down. It's actually, when it works, great for audience interaction. But you have to be on Blab in order to interact. You have to be on Blab in order to hear it, to listen to it, whatever. So if I go to Facebook Live now, I am now hitting a whole section of my audience that isn't on Blab and that can actually listen to the podcast live and interact live on Facebook Live. We do our homepage as well, our live page as well. So that's a different audience. So just different things that you can go out to different audience. And then also, if you have something that's more current, say you're doing a really quick post show, we're talking geeky podcasts here mostly, but if you're doing a post show for like Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or something like that, if you want to get the audience interaction like Chris Hardwick does on Talking Dead. So with Walking Dead, you gotta have to wait till after Talking Dead because everybody that's watching Walking Dead wants an after show is going to be watching Talking Dead. But so after that, then you can have your podcast, and if you stream it live, then people can come and get you. So there are some pros. However, Steven, there are some cons to watch out for, right?
There definitely are. And number one, if you make a mistake, they are going to hear about it. And that's something that could be okay. It could be not okay, but you want to be aware of that. And then the other thing is, it's a lot harder if you're wanting to give them the fully produced experience. Now, I'm talking about the experience where you go and you take your bumps and you add them in afterwards. Well, if you want to do that live, we talked about that during the live side of things, it can be a lot harder. So that's a little bit of a caution. However, we do want to talk a little bit more about distributing live. So we're going to assume that you're okay with the said cautions that we're going to offer you. And particularly in the way of Facebook Live, what you will need is a device or a program such as OBS, which is Open Broadcaster, XSplit. There's a variety of different things that you're going to need in order to stream your even if it's just audio, you're streamed live to Facebook Live. A lot of people are starting to do that because just like when we first kind of got into Blab, there was a lot of interaction, a lot of people checking that out. We're starting to see that happen right now in June of 2016. A lot of people are checking out the live streams. So it's a great way to maybe get your project on the radar of somebody who might not usually, because you can go and as a Facebook user, if you find this live stream, you can reshare it. And if you leave that live stream up, you can reshare the video later, which is awesome. And it's the whole social network shareability thing. It's pretty powerful right now to go to Facebook Live. And while you are streaming to Facebook Live, I'll tell you this, that the majority of these sort of podcasts that I do see offering Facebook live streams, they're not doing audio only. You could, but most people I see at the very least just having a single camera on one person. You know, if it's a 3-person podcast, I've seen some where they've just had the one camera on the person that is technically doing the streaming, which is okay, because if that's your main thing, what is your purpose of distributing to Facebook Live? It's to get more of an audience, to help grow your audience. And your audience, really, we've talked about before, live is a small portion. So you're trying to get more eyes and ears on your project who will then go, I like that. I'm going to subscribe to the audio version. And then they'll become a regular, fully produced consumer. So that's okay. You know, if you're not doing a video show and you want to just try it out, just do that. If you have yourself a simple webcam, hopefully you entered for that C920 contest that we had last month, you can definitely get yourself set up with a fairly basic setup, a little bit more advanced than the usual.
Right. So really what we're talking about is distributing your content to Facebook Live is the format that we're doing it now. We have some sort of video that's been produced and that's been streamed out to Facebook Live. We're not talking about taking your cell phone and your earbuds or the microphone in the cell phone and then walking around with shaky cam and you're looking at what's in the background, which does have its utility. It does have its uses. So I don't want to discount that completely. But if you're doing a long form podcast format, then you're going to have to do a little bit more advanced production. Now, this is easy. This is simple. And it's really free because I have been using OBS software, as Stephen was mentioning. And what you do is you capture your window. And what I'm doing is I'm capturing Blab in my case, or Hangouts on Air, wherever we decide to do. I don't have Stephen's Skeposaurus yet. I am working up to that. But for now, I have to use some sort of, even if I capture the Skype window or whatever, and then stream that out to Facebook Live, you have to be careful in terms of service. Some services out there don't allow you to repurpose your stream to another service. So just be careful on that, because if you violate terms of service, that means that they will just take your stuff down and it won't be available. Facebook might even cut off your ability to live stream for a terms of service violation. So just be careful of that. But all you have to do is capture the window of whatever you're streaming, whatever you're looking at. And then there is a stream code in Facebook that you put into OBS. And it is simple, and you start your stream in OBS and then it picks up on Facebook and it goes that way. So that's the type of production that we're talking about. I didn't want to get too far into specifics, but if you do have questions about it, let us know. There are a ton of tutorials out there right now looking at how exactly to use OBS in conjunction with Facebook Live. Now, I would recommend OBS. There's two different versions of OBS. There's OBS Studio, and then there's the OBS Classic. I would recommend you stick with OBS Studio because it's going to be more easy to use. It's going to be more upgradable as you go on and that sort of thing. So there's that. As Stephen alluded to, there's different programs, and we talked about them before. I don't want to get too down into the weeds on them, but XSplit, Wirecast, vMix, those sorts of integrating, switching, recording software, and you can use those as well. But if you're going for the free version, OBS works fantastic. It works great. Now, another thing that I would recommend is, as you're streaming out to Facebook Live, is to cut your bandwidth out to Facebook Live if your bandwidth's constrained. And both Stephen and I are bandwidth constrained, so we can't throw the complete 1080 stream out to Facebook Live and then expect the rest of our rigs to work and get great audio and stuff like that. So there are pros and cons to it. As far as distribution, though, and that's what we're talking about right here, it has the ability, and I've seen it work amazing, that the chat on these shows on these streams for different shows, different podcasters, um, different companies out there, they actually go by really fast. And there's a lot of people that are talking there, and a lot of people being engaged. If you want that sort of engagement, if you want that sort of interaction with your audience, Facebook Live probably is going to be the singular source as we go forward, because everybody's on Facebook. It's a universal source. It's almost like YouTube. Matter of fact, it's easier than YouTube because everybody's got Facebook and they've got it up. And when the notifications come up that so-and-so is live, then they know that so-and-so is live. And those notifications do come up. So it's not something to discount. However, it does come, as we said before, with some cautions to worry about. So there's that. So Facebook Live right now in June of 2016 is very important if you want to consider widening your distribution to hang on to and move ahead with.
I agree 100%. And the other thing to note here is, I know I briefly said it, but really, don't feel like you need to get yourself into a video podcast for Facebook Live. You will have to have video sent out technically somehow. It can be a still image through the software that SP talked about, or I think better is to just set up a camera on yourself and then send it out, and they will only need to see everybody else. But it is, in my opinion, a really good place to help distribute your podcast to. Another great place that I like, that surprisingly we've had good experiences live, but better experiences after the fact, is a service called Spreaker. Spreaker is one that you're going to pay a little bit more for, but Spreaker does give you that ability to send out audio live, but also to keep your podcast up afterwards. And what's nice about Spreaker is, like, let's say we sent this out right now to Spreaker. Spreaker is going to record it and record the live feature. Well, when we're done recording, SP could go in and replace that file so that the full produced version. And now, why do I say that SP could do it? Because SP uses Spreaker, right?
Yes, I do. I've been using Spreaker for a while now. Now, I was originally turned on by it because it is an audio stream format. Now, I've been involved in listening to podcasting and producing audio-only streams and podcasts for a few years now, and I go all the way back to TalkShoe, to Ustream, and applications like that. Right now, Spreaker is where it's at. You know, and you have to pay for it. I pay $20 a month, but then I get unlimited streaming, basically, on up to 500 hours completely streamed on the application. It is a media host, so it is like Libsyn or Podbean or Blueberry, anybody that you can actually go to and host your media on. The advantage that Spreaker has is it is a streaming platform so that I can stream my stuff live on. And before I get my produced podcast out there, if people want to listen to the live stream, just like we leave our live streams up on Facebook Live or YouTube, they can actually listen to the audio version. Now, audio versions are still very appropriate. There are people that are listening to your podcast that are doing activities such as driving or whatever, that they're not able to actually watch a stream. Spreaker is amazing. You can get it through your mobile devices. You can get it through your desktop. You can probably also, I haven't checked lately, get it through your desktop or desktop. I forget what they call it, but stuff like Apple Play or the Apple. Oh, geez, words are failing me right now. Like your Roku's and your Xbox Ones and stuff like that are attached to the TV. I think you can get Spreaker through there as well. So there are various different ways that if you just want an audio only stream, you can do that through multiple different things. Spreaker is integrated into some cars as well. So you have CarPlay through Spreaker, and Spreaker is not, unfortunately, a media host that I would recommend that you stick with. If you want your podcast, if you want your media available full-time forever out there, well, nothing's forever, but for a long time, if you want long-term storage, if you want a long-term RSS feed, I would not recommend Spreaker, and Spreaker wouldn't recommend Spreaker because they are mostly a streaming platform. Yeah. I'm not making this up. I mean, Rob Greenlee, who works for Spreaker, says that Spreaker is a streaming platform, and he has a show dedicated to how to use Spreaker correctly. So there are some great things that Spreaker can bring you. And the bonus on Spreaker is that when we do edit our episodes, I can then replace that file and it's available. So if people are subscribed to my feeds on the RSS, on the individual shows on Spreaker, they can pick up those episodes as it becomes available later on as well. And it all works great. We're actually seeing an uptick in downloads through Spreaker, and you can download the live show through Spreaker, and you can have that as well. So if you're just itching to get the content of the show that you're watching, or if people are itching to get your content of your show, they can download that live show and they can have it with them. Now, caution, of course, they're going to get all the bloody mistakes. They're going to get all the poor audio, all the blips, the technology, whatever that happens during your show, but they're getting it faster. So it's a trade-off, and you can make it available or not. Now, like I said, Spreaker does cost a little bit of money to get that RSS feed. There is a free version, but it's limited. I can't remember, like 3 hours or something ridiculous, 15 hours or something small like that. And so you can use it that way, but then you're limited to, I believe, 45 minutes on your stream. Most of our podcasts on the Gonna Geek Network run for about an hour to an hour and a half. So that 45 minutes wouldn't work, and I'd have to restart the stream. So Spreaker right now in today, if you're willing to pay for it, Spreaker is worth it, in my opinion, because it's anywhere between 10 and 25% of our audience, depending on from podcast to podcast.
Absolutely. I'm personally very surprised at the kind of numbers that we get post-play. You know, not even taking in consideration the live plays, the after the fact plays. It's pretty good. So again, a little bit of a community. And one of the other ways that you could distribute is by Facebook. But wait, Stephen, you just talked about Facebook for 5 minutes, right? No, I'm talking about after, not Facebook Live. You can absolutely upload your audio to your page, your Facebook page afterwards. And that's another way that people could consume it. They could take it and they can reshare it. So another great way that you could possibly do it is via Facebook. And I know a lot of people who have good success with this. And you got to remember, while a lot of your audience might be willing to go in and check it out through other ways, you also can capture a certain, let's call them lazy audience, who does just want to go click play. And the easier that you can make people consume your podcast, the better it's going to be as far as attracting listeners, because it's in a way like sales. You know, you got to pitch more to get the long-term clients, right? And so with this here, if you can make it easier for people to get that taste, they might come back later.
Yeah. So if Spreaker isn't your thing, we've talked about before, Mixlr is available. It's out there, and that is available. Mixlr has great audio quality. The reason that I don't go with Mixlr is there's more of an audience through Spreaker. There's more of a capability there. There are other options out there, other applications, but really Spreaker is the one that I would advocate for. And then if you wanted to go for a little less on the money side, Mixlr would be the next step down that I would recommend. Phenomenal audio quality, great. There's even a chat room integrated there, but the problem there is you can't replace a file. You can't upload a file. So if you wanted to change a file, what you would have to do is you'd have to actually stream to Mixlr on a new show, your new show. So however long that is, if you do a 5-minute show, it would be 5 minutes. If it's a 3-hour show, you'd be streaming for 3 hours on Mixlr to get that up. And then you'd have to go in and delete the old show. So there are some pluses and minuses with Mixlr as well. And like I said, Spreaker is what I would recommend after having messed around with a few of them before. But if you happen to have an audio only streaming option that you would like our take on, please get a hold of me, Stargate Pioneer at GonnaGeek.com, or go to any of the great better podcasting places to get a hold of us there.
Absolutely. And one last thing that I want to share here before we do almost wrap this up here is talking about actually distributing on YouTube. YouTube is something that there is the live component and there is the video component. We've talked before a little bit about both, but it is very similar to how you might use Facebook Live. You can definitely stream live through YouTube and you can post afterwards to YouTube directly. The only thing that you need to know with YouTube, where you're getting more advanced, is you are going to have to, again, make it video, because they do require video. You'll have to go, and even if it's just a simple image, you have to do it. You have to technically make a video file to put it up to YouTube, but lots of people do have good experience with that. My personal experience was that until I started doing a video show, I didn't get the sort of direction that I wanted from YouTube. I found a lot better quality interaction by people when I did start actually doing video. When it was just audio with an image, I I didn't really get much interaction. How about USB?
So the main reason that I used to do that on YouTube was simply for SEO purposes, that's search engine optimization. And since YouTube is owned by Google, I wanted to get as many search terms in the actual description, in the title, that SEO would pick up on. So that's really why I did it. I did it a little bit for discoverability, and I did it so that it was the only way that I could actually stream my own podcasts at work if I wanted to go back and listen to them later. So there was that. So it is a little bit of work. It was a little bit of PC processing. I used the Movie Maker that was inherent on Windows 7, and I was able to do it. Would I recommend it now? I don't know. I have not gone back for the shows since we've upped our quality on video that I have messed up something on the video and just don't think it's good enough to put out there. I have not gone back and put an audio only stream out there because I just don't think it's worth it anymore for my shows. That's my experience with it. Your experience might be better. I know some people do get a lot of great experience. The problem with a lot of the mobile devices that stream YouTube is that once you shut down YouTube stops streaming. And I know there's been some changes on different devices, Android and iOS, that might make that possible eventually. But right now it is simply trying to stream video. So once you shut down that window or you shut your phone screen off or whatever, then that stops the stream. And a lot of people are commuting, they're walking, they're doing stuff outside, they're being active, and they just can't watch the screen. And it takes battery to project the screen anyway. So they just want to hear the stream. So that's why I say go use Spreaker. There is a wonderful Spreaker app already on your phone, or you can download it and put it on your phone. It's free. And then you can get the podcast available there. So that's why I say Spreaker is probably a better option than YouTube Live for audio only streaming. But if you're going for the SEO, if you don't have a video show already and you just want that SEO out there, go by all means, try it and get back to us and tell us how it worked. I don't think it worked tremendously for me. I know we might have picked up a couple of new users, but you can go into the YouTube analytics, and for like Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., there's a separate Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. YouTube account that I've done this on with the video or the audio only with the just a picture of the show out there. When you look at the analytics, people are drawn in by the title. So they search for the title, yours comes up because of the searchability, and then you can see how long they stay. They don't stay for the whole show. Matter of fact, you're lucky if they stay for 5 minutes. So there's that as well. So I was only posting it for SEO purposes, and that's it. So Stephen, what do we got next?
Well, that's all that I had to talk about. I don't have anything else for distribution. I'm going to say it again. We did mention it last week. Networks are another great way to distribute the borderline promotion a little bit, and we'll talk more about that next week. But networks, again, can be a great place to distribute your podcast through.
That's right. And it's even better if you find a network that is interactive with you and that you can go back and forth between the shows and that sort of thing, and not just a place to actually throw your podcast out there just so people can find it. I mean, that there's a difference between a network and a podcast, what's it called? Distributor, like iTunes, like Google Play Music or whatever. There's a difference between the two. And if you get yourself in a network that doesn't interact with you, that doesn't exchange promos or anything like that, then you might not have that. Fortunately, we have all that great stuff on Gonna Geek. So that is the experience that we're coming from there. I do know that some networks actually charge you to be a part of as well. So be aware of how much money that you would have to spend to be a part of the network. And a lot of times it's not necessarily that they're trying to make money. It's just that they're trying to keep the lights on and keep the network on. And that costs money. Now we kind of take that in out of hide for Gonna Geek, but some networks don't, and they expect to be paid. And so just be aware of that.
Absolutely. All right, so next time we're going to wrap up this arc talking about promotion. Promotion is different in our opinion than distribution, and we're going to get there, and we're going to tell you all about different promotion methods and some things you want to avoid as well, because you don't want to be the 5:00 p.m. caller or the 6 a.m. door knocker knocking away trying to sell your product. You do not want to be that. And there are equivalents of that in podcast promotion, and we will definitely tell you all about that next week.
Welcome to to this week's Better Podcasting Download.
Download. This is a hot topic. This is something that we have seen around the community, particularly in the way of people talking about it both in podcast circles on like Google Plus and stuff, as well as people even on the Gonna Geek Network sort of talking about this. I don't know what it is right now, but it is all over the discussion boards right now. And we are talking about copyright in the download. Isn't that correct, SP?
Yeah, we're talking about copyright, also known as fair use. We've referred to it as using royalty-free stuff. So basically, it's using intellectual property that's been produced, video or audio, that is actually owned by someone else. We've talked about it before. We were kind of hit with it on the Gonna Geek Network personally because we had a YouTube issue that was taken care of, but we have moved forward, and there is more than just video. I mean, if you talk audio, you can't just take a clip out of like a football game, like an NFL game or a baseball game, the broadcast out of that. If you've recorded that for your own personal thing, that's great. You cannot take a clip of that and expect to broadcast it and be okay with it. If the Major League Baseball or the NFL gets a hold of that, they will come and tell you to take it down. If a network finds out that you've used like a news segment or whatever, they might tell you to take that down too. So just remember that the people that are distributing the property actually own that property, and it's up to you to prove that you can use it. So let's run down some specifics, what we're talking about with fair use, okay?
Absolutely. And before we do that, let's make it abundantly clear. SP and I are not lawyers. You should not seek our legal advice, or advice, I suppose, on a podcast. It is something that you want to pay a lawyer. There is a reason that there is a profession for this, and you want to seek actual legal advice before you do anything. But SP and I want to give you a bit of a snapshot of some of the things that have been going on in recent. And just to reiterate, particularly in the way of fair use, fair use is a term that some people use to describe, it's a legal term. And essentially what it means is that there are certain scenarios that you are legally allowed to use copyrighted material, but there are conditions that follow. I'm not going to give you the conditions because the bottom line is that SP and I don't particularly recommend fair use for the reason that fair use is essentially a defense. If you are going to use copywritten material, you are in a situation where, yes, somebody owns the legal rights to that, but under the law, apparently under fair use, you're allowed to use it for X, Y, and Z, and you're going to have to try to prove that that was X, Y, and Z that you did it. So we don't want to give you X, Y, and Z because we recommend staying away for a variety of reasons, including if you distribute on places like YouTube, there are things that will actually detect copywritten material and will take them down automatically. That was what SP alluded to before. We had that happen on a previous program, not on Better Podcasting. I believe it was a fair use scenario where the host did believe they were within fair use and YouTube didn't consider it, and down it goes. So we want to talk a little bit about that. And on the other side of things, we should also talk a little bit about just using other copyrighted material, which we'll get to in a minute. So let's stay on the fair use topic. SP, what other advice do you have in the way of fair use?
I would always err on the side of caution when you're talking about fair use. I know a lot of people are talking. Okay, so we are in the geek community in Gonna Geek, but it really applies to just about anything out there. So if you're if you're doing a review show like I do on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Starling Tribune, if you play a clip from whatever was shown that week on TV and then you talk about it, that's probably going to be okay because they're going to want that promotion that you're giving. You're giving them PR, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. You're talking about them, but you have to play us. And there's like a certain limit that Stephen was alluding to before. There are specific things that you have to stay under, but then you have to talk about it. You have to reference it. So you're not going to be able to play whole songs. That's why music podcasting is so hard. It's not like you could do the top 40 every week on a podcast, because those music licenses, they're starting to work on that. There's a couple of companies out there that are starting to get some of these music record houses, whatever, to come in and have their songs there, but it's not the big name artists. It's the smaller ones that are coming in, the upper comers that are being made available through startup companies, basically. And so you can't do the top 40 every week. It's not going to happen, or you're going to get massive takedown notices from the DMCA. So in my opinion, erring on the side of caution, if you have a thought about it, if you're saying, well, does this fit or not, err on the side of not, because it's just going to be extra work on you later to take it down and move ahead. All right. So we want to get into something that we actually alluded to. And Stephen didn't even know he did this, by the way. I was talking to him today and was like, hey, Stephen, we actually talked about this in the last couple of podcasts with Better Podcasting Gonna Geek. Didn't you realize what you did? He goes, no. Well, guess what? Stephen's got something to show you in terms of rewind. So Stephen, what do you got?
All right, let's take a look back a week, all the way back to the glorious day of June 10th, 2016. It was long ago. It was a sunny day. It was rainy day, because we distribute this podcast all over the world. And let's have a listen. Do you want to go ahead and do it? Would you like a fake drum roll? Because I can definitely pretend to do a drum roll if you would like. No. I can't do it any more than that. I really can't do it. I can try.
All right, that's okay. I got one. We got one.
By the way, we should pause here for a moment. The reason I did not play an audio clip was because I did not have a royalty-free audio clip to do it. And we think it is always important that you respect copyright in podcasting. So yeah, I did that last week, being super not realizing it, as I always do.
Stephen, what you did is you announced to the world your limitations in your ability to produce a fake drum roll with your own body.
See, that sounds more like a Wookiee, but, yeah, absolutely. It's not fair use, but audio clips are copyrighted as well in a lot of ways. Depends on the scenario, because there are certain weird things. But yes, overall, if you download material, it is probably copywritten, and you want to be careful about using said clip in your podcast. So then in episode 150, I threw that out the window. And episode 150 of the GonnaGeek.com podcast, we had a little bit of fun. And yeah, I threw that out the window. That's right. For the second category, our award goes to the individual with the best casual promotion placement on the GonnaGeek.com podcast, Stargate Pioneer! So just to give you a bit of backstory on that, we had a lot of fun for our 150th episode. We had, surprisingly, there were some awards. There was an award ceremony on.
It was surprising to us, yeah.
On the podcast. A little inside baseball. I surprised my other hosts with that. They didn't know about it. It was just a little milestone fun that we had. And you're thinking to yourself, but Stephen, you just played a drum roll in there. And wait, you played a sound of audience applauding. And wait, you just played a crazy Dream Enter sound effect to play those said clips. Well, guess what? I paid for all of those through the service we've talked about before, Pond 5. And that is something that they were very inexpensive. I paid $3 for the applause sound effect. I paid $5 for that timpani roll. And I think today I paid $4, I think it was. It might have been $5 for that Dream Enter / exit sound effect. So that makes it so that I am legally allowed to play that stuff. The music that you heard is courtesy of Kevin MacLeod. The tail end, I should say, or the beginning that you heard there in my clip on 150, that is a production of Kevin MacLeod, which we use his software on the Gonna Geek his music on the GonnaGeek.com podcast and properly attribute him to it. So that is something that we did that all legally using the proper payment. I had to properly pay to use the sound effects.
Yep. And just because you pay for it doesn't mean that you can give it to anybody for them to use, right?
Nope.
So you have to use it specifically for your productions. Whatever the constraints are on the particular payment, on the purchase or whatever, you have to live within that. So it just depends on what's going on. Kevin MacLeod has a lot of stuff at Incompetech.com, Incompetech.com. He also has a lot of stuff that I've discovered on the YouTube Creative Commons library that's out there, and a lot of it's the same, but there's some different stuff. So he's great, and we actually support him on the Get a Geek Network. There's several producers that actually throw money his way into his donate bin because we use it. I inherited a couple of podcasts that I use Kevin MacLeod's for the intro and the outro, and so that's that. But everything else I use for Palm 5. I use Palm 5 because not everybody's going to pay for stuff, so it's more individual and it's a little higher quality. Now, Kevin MacLeod stuff is highly produced, but in general, if you go to royalty-free sites that are free, the production value might not be there. So I prefer to go to Palm 5 and just know that whatever I'm going to be listening to, because you do end up listening for hours in some cases to come up with some stuff like the Better Podcasting intro and outro. I know we've talked about it before, but we actually had like a couple of months that we were looking at stuff, and it wasn't full time, but we actually had a Skype call that must have lasted like 2 hours or whatever, that we were looking at different musics for the intro and outro, and we finally decided on the one we have. Very happy with it still today, but that's why we go through Palm 5, is because we're both happy with the music and their interface, their searchability, whatever. Nothing's going to be perfect, but Palm 5 is pretty cool as well. So just stay within the bounds of the purchase agreement that you make for any royalty-free stuff.
Absolutely. And I just want to explain something else as well. We talked about Kevin MacLeod here, and he does offer stuff under Creative Commons and blah, blah, blah. There are conditions for that. You have to have a look. There are different levels of what's called Creative Commons licensing, and some of them require you attributing the use or the creator. Some of them do not. So definitely make sure that you do keep an eye on that, because there are different levels. And in any of the copyrights, always make sure you understand what it is, because there are some products that you will pay for that are royalty free, and they have like a one use type thing, and some you can use multiple times. Some you can edit, some you can't edit. But the bottom line is we wanted to do that. I spent $5 for a timpani roll, and so you can bet that I'm going to use it now because I spent $5. Sorry, I just really had to use it again. But the thing is, I can't give that to SP to use because I have paid for it for my use. If you go and you download this podcast and you edit out that section, you're doing that illegally if you use my sound effect, because I've paid for it for use in my projects.
Yeah, and I'm fine with paying for my own stuff, no big deal. And at the rate that this is, like $3, $5, whatever. Now, if you wait until there's a sale, like sometimes in the summer there's a sale, I always on Black